Hi, HR nerds. This is Nicole Dessain. Welcome to Talent Tales, the show where I interview leaders who have brought design thinking to their talent and HR practices. In today's episode, we have a special guest on the show. I'm joined by Stella Ioannidou, who is the IT workforce lead at Eurobank in beautiful Greece. Welcome, Stella.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very honored and very proud to be on Talent Tales. This amazing work you're been doing for human-centered design, and very happy to see some great friends and the collaborators of mine, Yanis Kanutos, Sonia Mooney, Laurie Quillos. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And then I was just saying it's very early in the US. So, but as I said, Stella is in Greece. So very excited to have a fellow European on the show today. So Stella, what's your story?
Okay. Okay, let's just start by saying that I'm not your typical HR person. I'm not sure I can actually call myself an HR person, given that I've never worked in an HR department or I've never, reported to a CHRO. I'm more like a project manager gone south. I started in project management thinking, that it's like the big projects that can move the world around, and you gotta help, generate value and all that stuff. And after like a decade in project management, I realized that what set apart good projects from bad projects or successful projects for not so successful projects was the people element. How the people who were part of a project actually were actually engaged in it, or if they liked it, or if they felt that they were gaining personal value out of it. So I said, okay, so as a next step, to advance my contribution, let's turn to coaching and start, incorporating some coaching practices into project management. And one thing led to another. And I started realizing that it's more about engaging people at a cultural context as a whole, rather than focusing on the 6 or the 8 or the 15 months of a project, because when the project dissolves, the team dissolves, the culture is lost. So it's actually an organizational element. And that led me to, feel very deeply about people and how they perform and what makes them tick, and helping them get, not just the projects or the tasks they need to succeed, but also the skills they need to succeed, what they need to learn or unlearn or relearn in some cases. And this is what I'm doing now. I lead the effort to reskill and unskill the IT personnel of Eurobank.
I love that. I love the comment that you say, I'm not HR, or I haven't reported to HR. So even though we, say applying design thinking to HR, but really what I mean is to people practices. And it doesn't have to be somebody who reports into HR or even has worked in HR. On the contrary, I'm intrigued by that. And I think more of us in HR, are needing to and should collaborate with others in the organization who have people leadership or people development responsibility. So I love that, and welcome to the show, definitely. I also love your path, how you came to the conclusion that really everything is sort of people-based, right? And I think we're finding that right now, and in general, that really at the core of every business are the people who make the business successful. So, and if we don't work with the people, develop the people, our business aren't thriving. So I love that.
When I realized that, you come to realize that, it kind of changed your entire mindset around how you approach work, how you communicate with your colleagues and your collaborators, and how you design for them and with them. So it's a paradigm change. Once this, this idea enters your brain, I don't know, at least for me, I couldn't get it out. It was like everything was human-centered.
Yeah, you caught the bug, as I call it. So tell us, usually our listeners love to hear about our guests' creative superpower. What's yours?
Okay, so this is the part where I bring a Post-it, and actually I brought, you know what they say, if you can't explain it with one Post-it, bring 3. So
is that what they say?
So these are 3 Post-its, and this is, an arrow. So Should I be explaining what this means to me and how this resonates to my
Yes,
superpower?
for
Okay,
the
so
audience.
the Post-its they have the same shape, they have the same size, they have different colors. So my creative superpower is the concept of analogy, and the concept that you can draw from something that looks like what you're trying to solve or feels like the problem you're willing to tackle, or there's an element that can actually help you convey meaning from something that originally may not appear so straightforward. I firmly believe, and this is how, this is the basis of every intervention I've contributed. Like, there is no, virgin birth. There's no, I had an epiphany. It happened like once in a lifetime. The truth is out there, and someone else has tackled the same problem in a different setup, perhaps in a different way, perhaps a different timing, but someone's had this type of problem. So what did they do to solve it? And how analogous is this? And what can you draw from someone else's experience and paradigm? And so by forming these analogies and these links, you can actually, create more possible solutions for you to test in a prototype phase later on than if you're, faced with a complex problem thinking, wow, this is too big. And this is, too complex. How on earth am I going to solve this? I need a genuine idea that no one's ever thought of. So this is what, I think it's crucial to how I bring a contribution through my work, the use of analogy.
Love that analogy, and get inspiration from analogous situations. Yeah. So, you mentioned earlier already, you hinted at human-centered design. So let's dive into that. Tell us a little bit more about how you discovered design thinking / human-centered design. Maybe you can share the difference in your mind between the two. Always interested in hearing that. And how you've applied it at Eurobank.
Okay, so let's start from design thinking versus human-centered design. To me, design thinking is one, buzzword, one marketing hashtag around one way to practice human-centered design. There are many ways to design based on the human being, and not as opposed to designing based on the process, design based on the value, and it's designing based on the human experience. So this is how I see the difference between design thinking and human-centered design. I think design thinking is one way to embark in human-centered design. It's in Eurobank, and in the context of an organizational context. It came like 2 to 4 years ago. I'm not really sure. Perhaps it's 4, perhaps it's 2. We started redesigning the way we did business analysis. We started rethinking, like, how are we, how are we reviewing our business processes, and how can we design better solutions and more tailored to our customer needs, more customer centric. So they brought in some new pilot methodology of design thinking. One thing led to another, and for some people, like my friend Yannis Kanutos here, this has been their, one of their main contributions, like assisting and bringing about organizational change using human-centered design. Eurobank is still pretty new at this, but they've had some pretty notable examples of how they've been implementing this. I can talk about the latest project if you want me to. It's the one I was involved with, and it was about how to tackle, how to manage the COVID response plan, the COVID crisis, because there was this huge extravaganza that came upon us, and no one felt ready. And of course, there were a lot of operational and readiness and business continuity plans that had to happen. But there was another thing related to how people were responding that needed to be addressed as well. And so what we did in our small ecosystem of IT, remember, because I work for IT, for the people of IT. So we were not able to observe our people in their native environment anymore, because everyone was sent home. It's not like I can, go around the corridors and say, hey, Mike, how's it doing today? How are you feeling with remote work? Because Mike is at home, and there is no way to do the Gemba talk and see how things are progressing. And we felt it because the design team, the central team, we were struggling, and we were thinking that, okay, if I'm struggling, other people are struggling like me. So how can we, understand what's going on, and then find how might we, proposal and work our way through there. So we took to us, this is a change management initiative. This is how do you manage this change that came in the form of a crisis, and how do you support your people, to maintain their productivity and to keep operations up, because this is a bank. We cannot just shut down and say, okay, so there's a COVID crisis, bye, we're shutting down now. And there were, the IT department is very, very pivotal, because the systems need to always be up and running. And we had to make sure that 4,000 people had the remote work infrastructure they needed to work from home. So things were pretty hectic for group IT, and we needed to make sure the continuity was not just on paper, but people actually could support this. So we borrowed some of the best, perhaps, tools of human-centered design. For instance, from ethnographic research, we took one-on-one deep interviews. So we went on and interviewed some managers and some people, team members, some of our colleagues, like, how are you hanging? Like the first week, it's a fear zone. You don't know what's happening. The first week of the lockdown, you're not really in the mood to hear anything. You just want some information, like, where do I go? What tools am I missing? Like instructions, right? You're not in a debate mood, or you don't feel like very productive. You feel threatened. Right. So the first week, as the organization was preparing the context, we did the deep interviews to see what's the pulse right now. How do people, tackle this situation? And what we realized is that, people, mostly they had a grip of the technical stuff, like how do I set up my remote PC, and which software I can use and stuff like that. But they wanted more about collaboration tools, and so now what will I be using? My mobile phone? Is there another way to do my meetings and stuff like that? So we said, okay, take this idea and let's build a prototype. So we built a prototype in the form of an infographic, our first infographic. And we said, okay, we'll show this infographic, and we'll do some small workshops with 3 of our management teams, their managers and their supervisors and then team leaders, that present this workshop, and have a small talk with them to see how they like the material, and what's their feedback. Like 2 weeks in, as we were doing those workshops, we were capturing the feedback in the form of an empathy map. So it's like what they're feeling, what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're doing. And we realized that only like a week and a half into those workshops, the questions, the themes were beginning to change. So people were less interested in tools and more interested in like, how do I manage my team? And how do I remove impediments in a virtual world? Or how do I monitor if people are actually working? So what you do, because this is dynamic, you take the feedback, and you're not afraid to scrub whatever it is you did, or revisit everything you did, and just add to the whole to the whole experience. So they said, okay, so we need more information about how to manage my teams and how to monitor what's going on. So we added another small, increment in our workshop, give it another like 15 minutes, and so on and so forth. We created in a month and a half, we did 20 sessions with all our managers and all our supervisors and team leaders in IT. And what I say we're talking about the group IT of the bank is 600 people. So it's a lot of people. And we're discussing like 70 managers. So it's a population, it's a notable amount of people. So we kept changing our how might we as things and the insights progressed, because they were dynamic. And at the end of the sessions, we realized that what people needed more from that workshop was more the feeling that they belonged in a group that cared. We don't longer want to hear about the tools. We're confident about managing our teams. We want to be heard, or we want to feel like we're not alone in tackling those types of problems, that there's other managers like me out there who are faced with the same problem. And so I can't fight. I have for example, a manager told us, I thought I was the only one who had this problem, that when I do a team meeting, only I'm talking. But when you hear it from like 15 other people in places, okay, this is a broader thing. It's not that I'm doing something wrong. This is something general, something, it generated a feeling of empathy and connection to a broader scheme of things. And this is how the entire communication management plan evolved with the help of human-centered design, from instructions on how to use tools to creating a sense of belonging in a team that is supporting you to make the best of this weird teleworking situation that we were abruptly thrown in.
I love that on so many angles. That's so awesome, because so my thinking is that if there was a time to use some human-centered design in organizations and in the world, really, it is now, because it's meant to work on audacious problems, on complex problems, on the gray areas. That's what it's literally for. So I think wherever we can apply it, and then it has the empathy component. Right, so I think those two, the complex problem solving and the empathy component, are like made for this time. So I love that you seized that and leaned on that. A question and by the way, just a reminder for everybody, put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. A question that I had, as you were saying, you adjusted as you went along, and yeah, totally agree. What might have been challenges in March aren't the same challenges that are there now, right? And they literally might have changed day by day or week by week. How did you keep on top of the pulse? You said you adjusted, but you did empathy interviews initially. How did you keep adjusting and learning how things changed along the way?
Okay, so we created, a shared repository of the tools, and every time there was an updated version, everyone got it, and everyone was notified that we were saying to anybody that, like, okay, we're not sending you the tool via email because the tool is dynamic. So we're creating a space that whenever you want to, go back and see the material again, you will always find the updated version. And after each workshop, every tip that made sense, or every solution to a problem that, okay, so this guy has solved the problem that 3 workshops ago Stella was saying that she was facing, so let's put that in the material and get everyone notified. Good. So now that we've created this, like you could say a community of practice, I don't really like the term, but you could say like a community of practice around this. And now we're going to go back to do a recircle with, the back to work element, because we're gradually planning our, end of lockdown and gradual return to working from the office. So this again is going to be another step, but I think that after you close the circle and you've addressed them once, it's like you've done the first, the first sprint. Now it's time to revisit people and see and get even more feedback about what worked and what didn't and what changed from when we last spoke to you. Because the first workshop happened 1 month and a half ago. So those people need to be revisited first to see how we can support them now.
Love that. Are there like any specific tools? You mentioned community of practice. People always want to know about the tool to use. I know there isn't a magic one for it, but anything maybe that worked for you guys successfully to gather that feedback, maintain this connection and community that you use in addition to the workshops?
we like to keep things super simple.
Yeah.
So we just created a shared OneDrive
Yep.
repository,
Yep.
like a shared folder for
Yeah.
everyone with the
Mm-hmm.
infographics on PDF form and the posters.
Mm-hmm.
We did some infographics and some posters to explain our tools on,
Mm-hmm.
the PDF so you can access it from
Yeah.
anywhere, from any device, and, just keeping it super, super simple.
Yeah.
And of course, to do the workshops, we did a virtual meeting room, like a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm. 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 And I love that. And I
Super,
totally
super
agree.
simple.
Yeah,
Super simple.
things should be simple. Use the tools that you already use with your team. Don't necessarily introduce anything new or fancy unless it's needed, right? So
Yeah,
I
because
love
at
that.
this phase, imagine this, people are
Right.
so overwhelmed with info
Right.
and tools. You don't need to tell them, like, get
Right.
another tool or get some other, there are amazing collaboration tools out there. But
Right.
right now, you want to focus on the
Right.
feeling of the people, not
Yeah.
playing smart pass with tools.
True, true. Yeah. So a question that usually people are curious about is, we understand things really well, but were there any barriers either in bringing design thinking in general to your practice or on this particular project that you had to overcome, and how did you do that?
How much time do I have to
Well,
answer
a few
that?
minutes. I know.
No, I mean,
Come
to
closer to
answer that, to give you the list of the barriers. And okay, so the okay, I'm not gonna say something amazingly breakthrough here. That it's the commonest barrier that for us as well, mindset. People are stuck to the old ways, like, why change something that worked for, I don't know, why not do focus groups? We've been doing focus groups for the past 30,000 years. Like, why not? Why change a habit or change a practice that we are very comfortable with? And so the mindset of comfort was the biggest barrier to introduce any new, way of doing work or generating value. And people may be initially drawn to a new way of doing work for hearing a buzzword like, okay, design thinking. Everyone's talking design thinking. It should be cool. Let's start with that. But once people see that it's actually more of a paradigm shift, it's an entire mindset behind this. You can, do design thinking and then just go back to doing focus groups. It's like it's a shift to how you're doing business. And most people they need, at least in the bank, for instance, project sponsors require, very cut and dry numbers and figures to support the business value of any project. And as you know, Nicole, this is not something that you can say from day one in a human-centered design project. You cannot really know that we're gonna be bringing you $30,000, dollars per week from the first prototype of the product or of the service. You really don't know. You need to go and test the waters and come back and iterate and do the loop, and it's a process. So even in those cases, though, with the sponsors who are very strict, rigid in their position to have money, money and figures to allow a project to be run, if you empathize with them and you see, okay, what's the standpoint, what's the barrier there, what's the the need, what's the fear, or what's the necessity, then even in those cases you can find ways to allow some input on embarking in human-centered design projects. In the bank lately, we've had many numerous projects that have actually generated value, and the most I think the best thing about the human-centered design project, at least the way management sees it, is that people love being part of them. So they're motivated and they're energized by their opportunity to actually embark in a design thinking project. So even if this is a weird way a weird reason to have human-centered design project, we actually use them we also use them to motivate people. It's like, okay, so I want something different for next year for my professional development plan. Okay, Stella, you're going to be leading, or you're going to be taking part in the human-centered design project. Just, people feel the part of the design of the creativity process, and this pays dividends afterwards when they go back to their, the traditional projects.
Love that. In closing, what's your favorite design thinking resource or hack before we jump into questions?
Well, it has to be analogy. I mean, I live and breathe analogy. I write about analogies. So, I even have a blog about how analogous the life of a working person and the life of a parent is. So it has to be that. And I think that analogy and the ability to analyze a big complex thing into smaller problems, smaller parts, can be the way to solve or to tackle any organizational problem. Like make it a sum of its parts and then try to find analogies.
Love
this
that.
Is a hack.
Love that. And so before we jump into questions, I give you a quote. I give my guest a quote and let you react to it. Are you ready? It's a surprise. Usually, that's the face that I usually get. I'm not sure, but let's do it. All right. Quote, to face the greatest challenges of life, we need to cultivate creative thinking. In times of crisis, you need to tap into every good idea you have, unquote. John Maxwell.
Yeah, actually, creativity is a mindset free, there is no other way. I think there is no other way to tackle this, because if you approach it any other way, in the face of adversity, in the face of problems, you'll get discouraged. But if you approach it like the creative spark, okay, so what can I learn from this, or what's the opportunity here? I mean, I had my family had to relocate amidst the COVID crisis. It was a nightmare, but if you approach this experience from a creative aspect, like, what can I learn now? So, okay, I learn to unpack very fastly, or I learn how to better negotiate lease plans.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that. So got questions here for you from the chat. How do we sustain that feeling of empathy and connection with the team?
Laurie, thanks so much for being here. Hi. The frequent check-ins. This is what we did. Like, you don't just give people resources and allow an infinite amount of time and just hope that they make do. Like, frequent check-in. So we did this workshop. Did it work for you? Was there any value? Why not? What making people part of the process, actually, part of the building, scheme. Like, if you design for them, they're not so engaged as if you design with them, because they know the minute that this happens where everything comes from. For example, when we designed the workshops, everyone knew why we were saying what we were saying, because most of them we had one-on-one interviews with, or they knew why we were discussing what we were discussing, and they were helping drawing the others who were not part. It's like, this part is, it's this specific tip is in there because that guy over there had a problem, and we know it because we were all part of the design process.
Awesome. I love that. I mean, that co-creation, that is what is so powerful anyways as a change management tool, right? Instead of designing something and then shoving things, people, throw it down the road, we engage them early on. And so we make them part of the journey as part of the connection. It works.
Me and Yanis, like, we were just the people who designed the fancy infographics. Who gave the content? People gave the content. We're just we're just the medium to spread the message. We're not the message.
Yeah.
This is what makes it impactful. And so people tell us that, imagine this, that if I tell you that if I don't tell you anything about how this is designed, I'll tell you that we have designed a 1-hour workshop through Zoom where we will be giving tips on remote work. Will you like it? Will you like the concept? It's like Menial. There are thousands of workshops like that. You don't have to rely and spend 1 hour of your work day on it. But
Right.
if I tell you that we're having an open discussion and you're going to bring us the problems you're facing and we're going to tell you how other people like you are solving them, that's going to be more relevant because we empathize with what you're going through right now.
Yeah. Love that. And those are such great closing words. We are at the end of our time. It was such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining. And
Thank you so much.
I hope you'll join us for a future Talent Tales. Thank you, everybody. Bye.